Hey, what's up? Welcome to my channel, BlackSwanRadio.com. I am your host, Rondell L. Jordan, author of the book collection under the title IlluminatedNubians.com. Today, I want to have a conversation about divine feminine, divine female. The Bible went through several undertakings. Its last English. It's been through the process of romantics, right? Translation into the Latin languages, and then also before then was the Greeks. We have today a copy of a book, a series of stories that have been passed down for generation after generation. And a lot of us base a substantial amount of our lives on these scriptures, on these books. And, I've read it from a non-religious perspective. When I was 18, I was leaving my father's home, my parents' home. My dad gave me the Bible as I was leaving to go to the United States Navy. And from time to time, I would open the book and just read the stories from beginning to end. And the first thing I learned is that what we read and what we've been told is two totally different things. You see, Genesis 2 is not the beginning of mankind. This is the beginning of a conquest, of an invasion. And the character God, the spirit that hovered over the face of the waters in Genesis 1, the spirit that created mankind, and the word created was used 3 times in Genesis 1:27 says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. Then God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion. God said, I've given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food, and to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, to everything that creeps on the earth in which there is life, I have given you every green herb for food. And it was so. So everything is telling us that God intended us to have abundance. And all was given to us, God the Creator. Now, there's a detail that most people do not talk about in Genesis 1:26 when it says, then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. And we breeze over that. And the key is us, our, and our. All right, it was used 3 times because it is to let you know that it is not a coincidence. It was not an accident that this mind frame, this mindset was plural. And the key is in the second or in the next verse where it says God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them male and female. He created them. So there you see the concept of male and female. That is the us, the our. It takes male and female to create life. Right? And so in the original faith system, you had the divine masculine, the divine male, and the divine female. Right? Amun and Amunet. Now, the female principle in the New Testament was taken out of context, just like the African details were taken out of context. So you have to piece these things back together. So this is the reason why in Genesis 2:24 it says, therefore man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. You see what I'm saying? One flesh. But the mother and father, you see what I'm saying, are separate entities, but marriage makes them one flesh. Right? So that one flesh includes both the male and the female. Alright? So that verse 2:24 begins, therefore man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. This means that therefore is indicating that we should be coming to the conclusion that man should leave his father and mother. Where was the mother previous to that? Well, the mother, if you look in the next, all right, you go through 25, verse 25, and then you go into the beginning of chapter 3, right? The first thing it says, now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field. Now, that word cunning was later added. That's a translation. The original word, if you look at the King James Version, it will say the serpent was more subtle. Not subtle, subtle. It could have been changed to subtle, but it was the word of choice was cunning. And that's to make you think. They're telling you what to think, and instead of allowing you to go through the process of the story, reading the story, and determining based off of the information in the story whether or not the serpent was cunning or not. You see what I'm saying? Originally, the word subtil is to describe how the serpent moves, a characteristic of the serpent, which is similar to characteristics of the female. See, we don't really recognize, but the uraeus was adorned by the chief priest or the chief kings and queens, the pharaohs, what we call the pharaohs of Kemet and Cush and Punt, Kerma and Punt, all right, the Nile River valleys. This symbol, the uraeus, represents the eye of Ra. And the eye of Ra represents the divine feminine component to the Most High. Wisdom. Life. See, the serpent swallowed the sun, and then from within the serpent, the son was born. And this is a metaphor for the womb of a woman. The woman. Now, if you are not familiar with the Wajet or the African ancestral knowledge, it'll be difficult for you to put this in perspective. But Wajet was one of the earliest Egyptian deities, which means she was a Kemetic deity before the Greeks came in and changed the name to Egypt. She began to be worshipped in the pre-dynastic period as the tutelary goddess of the Lower Egypt, the northern part of the country. She eventually became the official goddess of the monarchy when the Lower Egypt fused with Upper Egypt. But Wajet is the serpent goddess. All right. And the Eye of Ra, she represents the Eye of Ra, which is the serpent that swallowed the sun. And so if you can picture, there's a sun disk, and there's two serpents on each side of the sun disk, right? And on both of the necks of the serpent is the key to life. And on one side is the bird, and on the other side is a crown. The side that's a bird, that's where life goes into the serpent, representing life going into the serpent, the seed, right? The spirit, the essence, right? Going into the belly of the serpent. And then on the other side, the sun coming out of the serpent, coming back out of the serpent. And that is the cycle of birth that is being demonstrated in the art of the Eye of Ra. All right. So the Eye of Ra functions as the feminine counterpart to the sun god Ra, and a violent force that subdues his enemy. The eye of an extension of Ra's power, equated with the sun, the disk of the sun, but it often behaves as an independent goddess. So she has her own mind, she has her own intentions. All right. The goddess can be equated with several particular deities, including Hathor, Sekhmet, Bastet, Ret Toi, and Mut. The eye goddess acts as mother, sibling, consort, and daughter of the sun god. She is his partner in the creative cycle in which he begets the renewed form of himself that is born at dawn. All right. And that's where the story of Heru and the story of Jesus come from. She is the partner in the creative cycle. All right. So the eye violent aspects defend Ra against the agents of disorder, which is like Seth. He was a lord of disorder, right? Like Eris from Greek, the Greek goddess Eris. The apple is a agent of disorder or discord. All right. So the uraeus is the crown that adorned the pharaohs, right? That was a symbol of the goddess. All right. And she was depicted as a cobra, as the serpent goddess. All right. And this is the mother aspect of the story. All right. And so this is the reason why she's paired with Eve. Right. And if you know anything about early East African culture, the women, the females, would seek shade under the fig trees. And they would trade stories, and they would talk, gossip, and do things that ladies do in the shade under the fig tree. And, you know, there's a lot to that, because the only fruit, the only tree that was mentioned in the story of Genesis was the fig, right? They sewed fig leaves together and they made themselves coverings. All right. So, like I said, with the serpent, if you think that the serpent was actually a woman, actually a snake, you're being misguided. You're misunderstanding many of the principles that are being, alluded to in this story. And this is because the African nature has been taken out of context, right? But the serpent is related to wisdom. And the Lord God in the story is actually the one being cunning. If I'm just going to be straight, right? He's the one that's being deceptive. In the Genesis 3:22, he says, "Indeed, behold, the man has become like one of us." Notice that capital US, like we read in Genesis 1:26, "to know good and evil. And now, lest he put out his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever." Well, the tree of life has to do with male and female coming together, producing an offspring. So when he says, "Let us," when he says, "Man has become like one of us,"